you'd met Warrior at his gym, but he did an interview and he had this quote to say. He said there was the about this time period in '96. He said there was the click going on between Nash and Hall and those guys. They're scumbags. The kind of ribs and stuff they would play, tearing people's stuff up. They always got ulterior motives to destroy people instead of concentrating on what they have to offer and what they can do to play both sides to try and damage other people's abilities from the backside. What what do you think of that as his assessment of the click?
Well, I mean, from somebody that was probably the least athletic human being, he looked like a god and was an absolute plow horse. I mean, he was so and this is as you get is science and sports medicine and everything gets more and more advanced. Uh, and they study like the different like the cheetah and like the different animals that are that run 90 miles an hour. But one thing about all athletes, especially all world class athletes, and you if you ever like I was had watched a thing on the internet, and I was watching Brady walk across the football field, and he's in a suit because he's an announcer now. And but what they basically say is, and they showed a cheetah. So what happens is, if you're that kind of world class athlete or world class uh, alpha predator, you walk like this. The opposite is somebody that's absolutely unathletic walks like this. So if this is how you walk, when you walk into a room, you don't walk like this. Part of you just like that. You walk like this. Watch him run into it. Just point that out. That means the guy's a plow horse, and that was Helwick. He was just, and on top of that too, he would always like those kind of comments were were made all the time. I'll tell you what my run in with him. So I'm working on top for Vince, and you get 3-4 days off, maybe every 30 if you're lucky. And I was living in Atlanta, which is the world's busiest, well connected airport. So if you live in Atlanta, it doesn't matter what time of the day it is, there's a flight to get you to wherever it needs to if one of the guys goes down. And Savage got hurt. I got a call, and they gave me this. Here you can be. Da, 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 da. You can be in San Antonio before bell time. And I went, God, like I had 5 days off. Like I'm going to take my 5 days away. So I just looked at my wife, and we were still renting in Atlanta. And I said, "You want to move?" She said, "Where do you want to move to?" I said, "You want to move to LA?" She said, "I'd move to LA." She said, "My girlfriend Cindy's out there." So I said, "All right." I said, "LA's on this next loop." I said, "Well, I'll start looking for real estate out there." So I went out there. We were wrestling at the Forum. I flew as early as I could out to get there, and had already talked to a realtor, found a property in Manhattan Beach. This is 90, 94, 95, and it's a fixer-up, doesn't have air conditioning, 1,800 square feet, It's not oceanfront. It's one row back, and it was $7.99. I'm thinking that's pretty expensive. I said, but and they have a trimmer. So I talked to the guy, and we start doing the paperwork. So the next day we wrestle in Phoenix, and while I'm in the air, there's a magnitude 4.5 trimmer, and 4 houses get damaged in Manhattan Beach from this trimmer. One of them is the one that I'm trying to buy. So I took that as an omen, like, okay, maybe not Manhattan Beach. Landed, went to a IHOP, like a 24-hour pancake place to eat breakfast. Picked up a real estate book, and I looked at the prices in Phoenix as opposed to the prices in Manhattan Beach. Granted, we're not on the ocean, but Phoenix is a pretty sweet city. So I said, all right, I'll do that. So the next break we had, my wife and I flew out. We walked around for 3 or 4 days, and we ended up buying a house in Phoenix. Well, I didn't know at the time that the Warrior lived out there. And so the Warrior had a gym, like a bodybuilding gym. It was called Warrior's Gym. It was like corrugated steel, and it was like industrial looking with graffiti, but really great equipment. Because we've all seen his body, you could see what his interest was. So I go in, and I ask if Jim's there, and they're like, no, he's not here. And I'm like, really? Like, I'm thinking to myself, like, so who's driving the big jacked up truck out front that's all airbrushed that says Ultimate Warrior? If he's not here, like, who's that? And so this happens like 4 or 5 times. I didn't ask for free. I didn't ask for a discount. I bought full fare platinum membership, like $4.99 a piece for me and my wife. Paid it in full on my credit card. Because he's one of the boys. I'm like, so every time I go there, I see his truck, and he won't come out and talk to me. Finally, one day I go in there, and I said, is Jim here? No. I said, okay. And I acted like I went to the weight room, but I went to the pro shop, and I just ducked down to where the sweatshirts were. And I saw him go out this side door, like looking around, like scamper to his truck and leave. And I went, that's strange. So, and I used to train around 2:00 in the afternoon when I was when I was home, and he trained around 5 at night. So I decided, well, I'll catch him when he's working out. So he's working out, and he's doing lateral raises, and he's looking in the mirror, and he's doing lateral raises. And I just kind of walk, and I just stand behind him, and he's, about that tall. So my whole head's, above his. And he's like, I said, we have a problem? No, why? I said, man, I've tried 5 or 6 times to just say hi. I said, we have a problem. I said, let me know. I said, we can take care of it. No, not at all. So he's wrapping his workout up, and I'm going to do mine. So I go out to my car. I've got it's not airbrushed, but I've got a jacked up Bronco that just an Eddie Bauer model. You couldn't tell that it was anything. If you've ever, there was a Lifetime of the Rich and Famous that they did on diesel, and my wife and I are driving that truck to make a reference. So I go out, and there's notebook paper, folded, and it's stuck underneath my wiper blade. And there's something in it. So I open it, and there's two big fat joints, like inside the letter, and it's like a page, the back side of that page, and another half page of this letter from him explaining the Warrior Creed and how I'm Kevin Nash is such a warrior, and these gifts of cannabis from God's earth. And I'm thinking about, oh, he's just nuts. It has nothing to do with me. He's just a whack job. Like, all right, I'm cool with that. If you're crazy, I mean, there's nothing I can do about that. I thought it was actually something personal. And but when I gave my notice that I was going to go back to Turner, Vince asked me to do 3 favors. And he said, I want you to put over Undertaker at WrestleMania. I said, God, with a pleasure. You know, Mark and I have been up and down the roads for, probably 900 days together during that time, if not more. And then he said, of course, I'd love you to put over Sean in Omaha in your house, which was a match where I pull off Fashawn's leg. I said, absolutely. I said, anything else? He goes, I want you to put over Warrior on Raw. Okay. I said, I'll have a match with him, but if he goes over, it's because it's a shoot, and we'll do it live, and if I beat his ass, I just beat his ass. Vince looks at me, doesn't blink. He goes, those 2 will be fine. So I think that got back to Jim. And then, like, years go by, and he, again, made some kind of verbal attack on us. And
because he said when you came back in 2011, because somebody asked him, why do you not dye your hair? Because you dyed your hair. And he said, because I'm not a dickhead who tries to overtake young talent or something.
Yeah.
So then naturally you challenged him to a shit fight.
Well, why wouldn't I? I mean, it was $100,000. It wasn't like it was chump change. I mean, I know it. You can look at a human being. It's like when the first time when I broke into the business, everybody thought that Piper was a tough guy. And, like he, tell everybody, I was a Golden Glove boxer, and I was this, and I was that. And he sold wolf tickets his whole career. I never backed down, and he'd crazy, and he'd, open the beer bottles with his teeth, and, oh my God, Piper's nuts. I wouldn't want to fight Piper. And Scott and I were getting ready to work with those guys, with Flair and Piper in Moline. So the go home was at the Boston Garden, and it was sold out. And we're the last match on Nitro. So Scott and I are sitting down, and we're in the back with those guys. And Scott says, hey, we got like 12 minutes. We don't want to give them the match. So whatever we do, let's not jumpstart this. Let's just take our time, give them a taste. And then we've got some, we had a couple of run-ins to so they could get out of it with there being a finish. But we needed to kind of make it look like they had a chance, because I don't think people, Flair and Piper weren't going to do much against Hall and Nash in a real fight. So, lo and behold, they get done with the announcing the 2 teams, and Piper just charges me and Scott. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, the only thing, once again, like, Mabel, don't jump on my back. Whatever you do, don't jump start. Okay, well, that's it. If you're going to do one thing, jump start. So Piper comes in there, and we're like, working. We're throwing punches, but we're not hitting him. And because we're not hitting him, he's not stopping. So finally, I have to rifle him with a couple of like forearms to the side of the head, and he realizes like, oh, okay, well these, and so we got through that, got in the back, and I sat down in the locker room, and I was besides myself. I was just like, what did he not understand about not jumpstarting this match? And Scott, who knew me better than anybody, could just tell that all he's got to do is just stir me a little bit. He's like, well, man, I'll tell you, big guy, I think he did it to with you. He wouldn't be that stupid. Yeah, he would. Dare you to go do something. Come on, let's go then. So we're right across the hallway, and it's Piper, Hogan, and Bischoff. And Piper's got this bodyguard guy. And I kicked the door open, and Macho's in there too. And I kicked the door open with my foot. And I said, you motherfucker. And I start screaming at Piper. He jumps up and comes at me. And I'm thinking, oh. And he's small, I was like 335, 340 back then. So I just, with an open hand, I just bear palm, bam. I smack him in the side of the head. He goes down. He lands, and when he looks up at me with this absolute look of horror. And I'm like, oh, he's a puss. And he's terrified. And I'm a bully. How did that play out? And so I just looked at him. I turned around. I said, I see you in Moline. And then we walked out of the thing. So he had got in Bischoff's face. He had gotten drunk and got in Hogan's face. He'd got Macho's face. And when it was done, like that night at the bar, they were just like, I thought he was a tough guy. I said, obviously he's not. So jump forward like 4 or 5 years, and the whole podcast thing starts. And he's on somebody's podcast, and they ask him, hey, what is it true Nash beat your ass in the locker room? I would never say I beat his ass. All I did was I smacked him one time. He just didn't get up. And I, if I was Roddy, I wouldn't have either. And so I get a phone call, and he's like, hey, man, like, would you mind if we kind of like get on the same page and we put a story together where like I kind of leg dove you and I took you down and we kind of rolled around? I'm like, as opposed to your first homosexual experience? Like, no, that ain't gonna happen, dude. And I said no. And then he would tell the story, and he would say that, it was, they had to pull us apart. He'd always change the story. And Bischoff, Hogan, Scott, Mach, X-Pac, all knew the story. So lo and behold, God, now of that scenario. This is how scary life is. Bischoff, Waltman, and myself are the only living people in that story. Well, I can really change that story around now, Kat.